Hello?
Hello?
Hello, hello. Sloan here. Anybody there? Hello?
Yeah, we'll get ready going. We'll start in a couple minutes.
Hello?
Are we on? Circulate well, I guess. I think maybe do a sign-up sheet, but a lot of people.
We can send it around. Send it around? Sorry.
I'll have to have something to write on. Maybe I can take a piece of paper.
Take some of this. We're going to write.
Yes, we do
Commission.
Where the hell is it?
Do you mind if I call their attention?
Yeah, well.
If I could just have your attention for a minute, we're going to send around the sign-up sheet, and you'll just put your name and serve on your name, add that to it, and if you're just a resident, just put resident.
All right.
Okay. It's 5 o'clock, Tim.
All right, we'd like to bring the meeting to order, please. Good. We'll call the joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Management Commission, Open Space Commission to order. We have Suzanne Call, who's going to be our scribe today for everyone. And I'll say at the outset that we must be out of here by 6 o'clock because there's another commission coming in at that time. Today, we are not going to take votes and do anything dramatic. This is a discussion so that everybody can hear what each has to say. I think we know why we're here. We have a very attractive piece of land, and there's a deed provision that makes it that it's supposed to be used for public access. And we also have other elements about the property that others are concerned about. So I think what we want to do is to hear what people have to say. I think we can act in a reasonable fashion and keep temperatures down so that they don't get, don't become unproductive. I'm sure we won't have a problem in that regard. We have a couple of people on the phone. Who's on the phone, please?
Sloan, Dannenhauer.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Matt Ward. Matt Ward's on the phone.
Yeah, okay, Matt Ward. Very good, very good. So let's see. In as much as harbor management is taking some initiative here, would a spokesman, either Chris, would you like to come on up? And if you want to sit here and just, I think this thing will pick up people making remarks.
Sure.
And appreciate your coming out.
Thank you for having us.
Chris is, are you still vice chair or you've been anointed?
The vice chair, acting chair.
Oh, good. Good. Okay.
Yes.
Fine, sir. Thank you.
So I figured it'd be a good point to start with the historical facts of the property. I think that's a good starting point. So on March 21st, 1958, the McGowan family sold the property to the state of Connecticut. There was actually a CT Supreme Court case on that called DeLinks versus McGowan, and it's well documented, and I'll read a couple excerpts from that case. This property provides access to the Black Hall River and a place where members of the public may leave their automobiles, launch their boats, and descend to the river. The general public, as well as the residing in the neighborhood of the river, to use this river to reach hunting and fishing grounds. So that was a 1961 Supreme Court case where they discussed about the property and the access and the public access to that property. February 6, 2002, the state gifted the land to Old Line. And in that deed, there were 4 stipulations. The town shall use the premises for recreational access to the Connecticut River, maintain ownership, they weren't allowed to sell it or give it to anyone, reserve the right-of-way as described in the deed, it's the right-of-way to the rest of the property, reserve the right to cross the premises by foot or by vehicles, and of course, the state wanted their tax money that now the town of Old Lyme owes tax money to Connecticut. So that was in 2002. In the late summer, early fall of 2007, the Board of Selectmen in town here started a town landing commission. During that, they talked about 3 different properties in town which they wanted to develop and look into proper access to the rivers and our waterways. One of those was the Button Ball property. During that, the Town Landing Commission reported in the meeting minutes that the Button Ball property was a spot to create parking and signage would be discussed. After 2007, property disappears from all meeting minutes in any historical records I can find. Today, I checked the deed. It's property number 43-52. It's 3 acres. It's located at 36-1 Button Ball, and it's currently deeded to the town of Old Lyme. It was sold to them for $0, and the deed states that was June of 2002. So the property owned by the town of Old Lyme. So those are all the facts that I've discovered that we've done through our feasibility and things like that. Does anyone dispute any of those facts? Do you guys have any other information regarding to the town's property, its deeded rights, et cetera, et cetera? Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was my impression that piece of property was deeded to the town under the auspices of the Open Space Committee of the Conservation Commission. And with a letter from 2004 that states that, and from the chairman of that committee. That was before the Open Space Commission was founded. It was part of it.
Yeah, so that's not what the deed says. I'd like to see that. I'd like to look at it. And, either way, it is the town's property. And I think, as select people, I think we got the right people here to discuss it. So then, as obviously you all know, the Harbor Management Commission has a vested interest in looking to gain access to the waterways. So I'd like to read a couple of our mission statements on what we do and why we do it. So one of our statements is to develop new points of public access for the public of water access, fishing, crabbing, and views of scenic vistas, to promote a safe, attractive area and appropriate facilities for all types of recreational boating, including commercial marinas, moorings for local resident transients, vessels, and paddlecraft trails and launch sites, to balance the rights of private property, riparian property owners, in this case, the town owns this property, and the public trust, assuring reasonable water access to riparian property owners and unrestricted use of public trust waters to the public. And the fourth bullet I'll go through, and we have about 16, 17 different missions, but the fourth I'll go through is to preserve and protect and enhance unimpeded general public access along Old Lyme shoreline, particularly its public beaches and waterways. So now what I'd like to do is update where we are with our feasibility study. So I want to be clear that at this point, this is feasibility study. We're trying to understand, is this feasible to have a property in Old Lyme Town? We already own it, so there's $0 we have to spend to get there. There's already access to that water. Is it feasible to use this as a scenic vista, as a kayak, as a boat, whatever? Just access to the water. So what we did to date is we did some site walks. We took some aerial footage with drone to see what's there. Obviously, you can't see everything when you're standing on the property, so we put up a drone, took some pictures. We took some ground footage, and we had the DEP come to the site to assess the usability of that site. The Dbp comments are as follows, just a summary, but we can certainly reach out to DEP and get them to define this in higher detail. But the marsh that's currently there is called high marsh, salt marsh. Yep. So that particular marsh does not need the lighting requirements as other marshes in the area. So what the DEP said is there would be no challenge in putting a 2-foot high dock there. So it wouldn't be obstructive to any visual obstruction, but it also wouldn't block the light, which isn't as needed for this type of marsh. So there's no environmental impact if we did progress with a dock. What they did say is if you did build a dock, you could build a dock down there, a fixed pier with a horizontal float at the end. He also stated that if the town did decide to issue or request a permit for a dock in that area, that the DP would see no reason to reject it, because there's no concern from their point. DP also stated that they look to help provide water access to the public, all while regarding environmental impact. They did state this is not a good spot for a boat ramp, and what the discussion there was, you can't pave it. You're not going to have a truck come down and pave it, although it was originally intended for that. Doesn't make sense for this property, and I think we probably can all agree on that one. He said the location has very low environmental impact for opening it up to the public, but an extremely high public access upside. So what he had stated is that, a lot of us that have waterfront property or get to go to waterfront property, often we enjoy those scenic vistas, we enjoy those properties. In this case, this is an opportunity to get people that don't get to enjoy them on a daily basis the opportunity to get there safely, effectively, and it's a very easy access point. So he said the upside is dramatic. He also said that if people get to see the access and get access to those properties, they're more likely to manage that property and treat it more with respect because they understand how valuable it is. So I thought that was an interesting point that he made. So then I said, well, what about the bird life impact? Is there any concerns there? So first, ospreys. Not an endangered species, not a species of concern anymore. I mean, which honestly is a good thing. We're doing the right things in town. We're developing our osprey nest. I think there's 68 plus osprey nests just in Old Lyme. And then the other thing is the marsh sparrows. We all care about the salt marsh sparrow. DEP stated that there's no data to show that docks have any impact on the salt marsh sparrow. And the other thing that DEP said, which he made it very clear, was the property owners have a right to access the water. So I think that's important. Riparian rights, it's in our Harbor Management Commission mission. It's in the state deed. You look everywhere, we have access rights. And so next steps for the Harbor Management Commission, where we are today, we're going to continue this feasibility study. We're going to understand what is going on in the property. Does it make sense? Are there opportunities? Going to get more input from the town residents and property abutters of what type of access they would like to see there. Since this has showed up on our meeting minutes about, I think 2 months ago it started showing up on our meeting minutes, the calls and the emails and the messages I've gotten from the town have been dramatic. People want access to this property. I've heard stories from residents where they used to go canoeing there. They used to go kayaking with their dad. This is a spot that has been open for years, and only recently has it been shut down. I'd also like to discuss with our Harbor Management Commission and our police department how to ensure we keep this property neat and clean. I think that's an important piece. We don't want it to get trashed. I do like to mention that the Harbor Management Commission has about 7 landings in town right now, and we've never had an issue with debris, with littering, with trespassing, or any issues, because we take it as a commission. We're responsible for that. We bring in public works where appropriate. We bring in the police department where appropriate, and we keep those accesses clean and accessible for all of our residents. We're going to look into what proper signage could go there, what parking is optional, what we could do to get access to the scenic vista. And on the third thing is, I know Tim said we're not going to take any votes tonight, but I think one of the important things is I'm going to request the Board of Selectmen to ask for the removal of the no trespassing signs on that property. They're put up illegally, they're not accurate, and the town owns that property. I'd also like the Board of Selectmen to ask the property abutters to stop cutting down trees on the town property. There's been numerous trees that have been removed illegally, and I'd like that to stop. There's many articles that I think we've all can have access to the internet. You can research, but I think one important thing to mention that in our eastern central Connecticut area, 45% of our residents access the water through kayaks or canoes. So we're knocking on the door 50%. This is a perfect access for that. The currents are not that strong there. It's a short walk to the water. You can easily launch kayak or canoes there. This is by far one of the best pieces of property I've seen in this town for kayak access. That's all I got, Tim.
Any comments about the fragility of the marsh grasses and stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah, so DEP did mention that in this salt marsh, especially this type, they do not typically see any trampling of that. It's very strong, and especially if you put a dock there, it guides people to stay off the marsh onto the dock to access the water. So he saw no concerns. I think a great example is over by we're going down the DEP Street, Perry Road. There is salt marsh right there that's similar. Every springtime, especially right now, and all summer long, we see fishermen lining those shore banks. That marsh is exactly the same as all 16 years I've been living in town. It hasn't changed a bit, and there's 40 people there on a weekend fishing off those areas. So I think this spot is pristine. It is perfect. It's a great spot to open up for a landing. I know we've had some challenges with property abutters in other parts of town. I want to make sure we get ahead of this and we focus our efforts to keep this open, because this is a town piece of property and the town residents have a right to use it.
And the depth of the water moving boats in and out.
Yep, so-
Is it restricted low tide, do you think?
For kayak or canoes, there's no issue. DEP also stated that when you're trying to gain access to the waterways, you don't always necessarily look, hey, can you get to do it low tide and high tide? Any access to the waterways is a great opportunity for our residents. I've been there at low tide, I've been there at high tide. There should be no issues at any tides to launch kayaks or canoes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, give equal time to Evan.
Yep.
Yeah, get near one of these little speaker things for our, there you go. Evan is co-chairman of the Open Space Commission.
Yep, I've got them. Well, thanks very much for the opportunity to put on our oar here, so to speak. So I've got some prepared comments.
Can you speak up? Just speak up. I'm right here and I can hardly hear you.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Well, anyway, I'll dive right in. We recently learned that the Open Space Committee, which was preceded the Open Space Commission, was within the Conservation Commission, and that it was the Conservation Commission that petitioned the property located at 36-1 Button Ball to be given to the town as open space for the purpose of Connecticut River access. We're not disputing that Connecticut River access was the point. That was in 2002. A couple of years later, I think probably after some review of the property and its suitability for access to the Connecticut River, the then chairman of the Open Space Commission committee, part of the Conservation Commission, George James, who is here tonight, noted that in two letters that there were significant problems concerning the property's use. First of all, Mr. James noted that there was a very narrow driveway that might permit a single car to park. That the water empties during low tide and can strand a paddler in deep mud. That is still happening, and we feel it's probably in the 20 years since the acquisition of this property in town by the town that has probably even become more dire. The neighboring property has been both properties. That roadway is owned at the beginning by the Blackhall Club, and they've been plagued by trespassers who access the property to dump trash. They've dumped used appliances, all manner of detritus. And that there was and as you mentioned, there's an osprey nest nearby, and a large amount of human activity near these osprey nests, I know for a fact, disrupt the ospreys, and it's been a long road back for those birds, and we see no reason why we should insert ourselves and have into an area where they seem to be thriving. Just as a side note, the town officials were not aware of the conditions in terms of the low tide and so forth at the time that the request was made for the property. At the time, in 2004, there was a request by Mr. James by letter to Marilyn Giuliano, who was the state representative at the time, that this property be swapped for another piece of property with better access, better water access. In other words, where you could get in and out of a piece of property at all tides. Somebody going out at high tide, kayaking down to the point or around Great Island or something and comes back at low tide, they can't get back in here.
Do you know which land that was to swap?
That was never, it never happened. It was supposed to be a swap up on the Lieutenant River by the old Bow Bridge abutments where there's plenty of water. And there's parking.
Is that like original you were trying to swap, or was it other town land that was swapped?
It was other state land, I think. I don't know.
I would just, excuse me, and I would just mention that the letters from Mr. James referencing a swap were given to Mr. Stock.
Yep. 10 minutes ago, I'll read them.
Okay. At the time, almost 20 years ago, Mr. James cited practical obstacles and ecological concerns, and that property has since remained in its natural state, and the proposed transaction, the swap, didn't occur. And so that all happened before the Open Space Commission before it existed. So the current Open Space Commission does not hold. We don't have any of the files of the Conservation Commission, and all of this has come up so quickly that we have not had access to the Conservation Commission files going back. This property, as you mentioned, this property was acquired, and then there was some activity, and then no activity. There was also no activity between 1958, when the state of Connecticut acquired the property, bought it from the McGowans for water access, and the state never did anything about it. The town never did anything about it, probably because it's not a great place for access to the water.
I think you're assuming all that. Do you have evidence that there's no activity of usage of the property?
Well, all you have to do is walk around the property. There's no parking. There's no access.
All right, well, let's let him finish. Well,
Let me just. Yeah. I was sort of interested to see that a member of the Harbor Management Committee was quoted in a publication that this was a secret property. Nobody seems to have any real information on it, other than, it was acquired by open space or for open space, but it was also acquired for river access. So the jurisdiction on this is a little fuzzy. So there was some shifting of responsibilities between different commissions, and it was not listed as open space, owned in fee in any records maintained by Diana Astor Johnson, who is deceased. Her records were the ones that we relied on for the open space plan update in 2020. And so there has been no deliberate attempt to overlook the property. We frankly didn't know under whose jurisdiction this property would be. So that's something that I think the Board of Selectmen and perhaps the town as a whole should figure out and eventually assign some jurisdiction or authority. And the issue of the tides is really important. Personally, I think that with sea level rise and more frequent and harder storms, that tidal variance is going to even increase, and that low water levels will continue to exist. I think that all the public images so far on that have been sent out on Facebook and in the Connecticut Examiner have only shown the property at high tide, and so I think there's an opportunity to see a different viewpoint at low tide. And I live very close to a salt marsh. I studied salt marsh ecology in graduate school, and my opinion of what's happening to the salt marshes in all up and down Connecticut coast, and especially in the Connecticut River estuary, is that the salt marshes are in trouble. They are disintegrating before our eyes. You walk around and look at the edges of those ditches that were created in the 1930s and see what's going on, and they're getting wider, and they're getting the peat, which is what underlays the marsh, is beginning to disintegrate, and so I think that we should look for public access that would keep people off the marshes, and so we have the benefit of the marshes, which is there are a multitude of benefits, but and the Open Space Commission certainly isn't opposed to public access. We have hundreds of acres of property with public access, so that's not the issue. It's the nature of the property itself, which is, in my estimate, probably more than half salt marsh, and we need to protect the salt marshes. The property does offer opportunities for active and passive outdoor recreation, but it's also important for coastal preservation. And the state of Connecticut is now spending hundreds of thousands of dollars up and down the coast to preserve salt marsh. So I think there was a quote by Joe Courtney emphasizing restoring coastal wetlands and mitigating the effects of climate change. I quote Joe Courtney, "Salt marshes are the home of an incredibly diverse range of wildlife, from birds to blue crabs, and they're extremely important for our region's fish population." If that wasn't enough, healthy salt marshes also help mitigate the impacts of flooding on coastal communities by absorbing storm surge. And that's true all up and down the Atlantic coast, and probably on the Gulf as well. So the state is committed to salt marsh restoration, and I think we need to. The main thing is to slow down on this proposal and make sure that your feasibility study continues, and that the Open Space Commission has the opportunity as well to have an assessment, an environmental assessment, to look at the ecology of that particular salt marsh. We know for a fact that the state of Connecticut has that parcel designated as critical habitat, and it's on the map of the Natural Diversity Database, which is kept up at stores. And it's a map of Old Lyme that the location comprises a critical habitat for various listed species. So it's another reason for a rigorous review. And one of the other things that I've been thinking about, and we haven't had a chance as a commission to discuss this, it's all kind of been rushed, and we'd like the chance to have the time to do the work that needs to be done to make sure that that the proposal from the Harbor Management Commission isn't going to impact the environment of that particular salt marsh, which is, as I say, is under the Natural Diversity Database is critical habitat. This is a final note. The Open Space Commission was frankly disappointed that its former chair, Diana Atwood Johnson, at her death several years ago, bequeathed 12 acres of land at 19-2 Mile Creek Road along the Black Hall River to the state rather than to the town. The commission believed, and it still does, that this property would provide better public water access to the property than the Ball Road. One would launch into a full water body without any disturbance to salt marsh or tidal wetlands. I would suggest that the Harbor Management Commission may wish to initiate a detailed discussion with the state regarding a cooperative coastal access study there. It would also be less disruptive in a residential area, and so I would hope that the Harbor Management Committee would consider that suggestion.
Very good, thank you.
I just want to say a few things to a couple of comments there. So the right-of-way right now is 40-foot wide. The average driveway is 12-foot wide. Mm-hmm. So we have close to 4 times the width deeded to the town for access. The deep and shallow discussion, DEP made it clear that any water access for the public is ideal. If you can't access at low tide, which I believe you can, that's okay, because you still have 6 hours of either tide on either opportunity there. From a property management standpoint, there's some concerns with trash. You know, like I said, the Harbor Management Commission, we respect our properties, we keep them clean, and we involve the local police department. If people are bringing trash to the Black Hole property or Project Abutters, that's their responsibility to make sure that they are keeping their space clean. You bring up ospreys. All the osprey nests are over 200 feet from this property. There's no osprey nest on this property, and 200 feet is the respect area that you're supposed to give ospreys. You talk about critical habitat, absolutely. The DEP also mentioned that, and that's why they recommended not to allow people to walk on the marsh and to build a dock, which would keep that habitat safe for the sparrows, for the birds, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, the 19-2 Mile Creek, we will also look into that for potential access. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Wait. I also want to give Black Hawk Club an opportunity to say something, in as much as they own large property there. So who would like to speak on behalf of the club? Oh, Phil Neaton, Superintendent.
I'm the superintendent of the Black Hawk Club. I've been there 40 years. And
you're vested.
The property's never been a secret. People have gone down there and crab. People go down. A lot of people go down to swim in the pond we have there, which is not part of what the state gave or what the town owns. There's a lot of garbage down there I pick up. There's everything: sinks, refrigerators, tires, building material. So it's quite a dump site. But there are a lot of people in town that go down and swim down there, you know, in the fresh water of our gravel pit. And, you know, I know it's a right-of-way. I can only do so much to keep people out. I think if it does become more public, you're probably going to see more posted signs, not less. I don't know. But the signs that are down there now are, they're on our property. I don't mind moving them. I don't mind doing whatever we're supposed to do with it, but it's a lot of mess down there right now. I pick up a lot of garbage.
Have you ever contacted the police about that or no?
Yes. It didn't go very well.
In recent years? Yes?
The fridge was 10 years ago. They weren't very...
Anecdotally.
But the one thing they did say is they agreed that I should post that land so it makes it easier for them. If somebody's down there doing something wrong, they don't need me to press charges. They're trespassing. The police can take care of it right there on the spot.
I respect that. I'm in a position to sign. I look at them as when I was down to look at the property, I want to make sure it's on the right road because it looks like someone's going down that road wall.
Right. We might have to move them. I don't know. I mean,
has there been anything done in terms of distant property management with cameras that cameras or something that you go to call in 5 to 10 years because they haven't been a big problem?
There's a pile of garbage down there now. Somebody rebuilt the deck and dumped all the lumber down there. So I've got everything: beer bottles, diapers. Some messes are not better than that.
So, ask a question. Can you explain to me the condition that it is in right now? Like, I'm sure you've been there within the last week. So
His parcel.
yeah, I mean, when you go down there, I mean, is there garbage there now?
No, it's clean now. I mean, when the fishing season starts, there'll be more beer bottles, more containers from lures, broken bobbers, fishing line.
Is that for the people going in the swimming hole itself? Like, is it congregating around those swimming holes where you're buying the majority of your trash?
Yeah.
So that's not the area we're discussing.
I know. Yeah. I still have to clean up a mess.
So I think, as I stated, when we have properties under our jurisdiction for the town landings for water access, we make sure public access goes down there. We do it ourselves. So I think this could actually benefit your problem because you're going to have support staff from your harbor management plus the town supporting that property.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
I think I'm still going to be picking up a lot of garbage. But
when you first enter the road to the town property, there's a large pile of stumps off to the left. Is that from the golf course?
Yes.
Well, that
Or
makes
what
it, I mean, no offense. I mean, if people see that, we can, I know that's wrong, but that's how people think as well.
The people that dump leaves and sticks down there, that's not a big deal. I can push them out of the way. But toilets and refrigerators and sinks and...
property, they certainly have the right to do that. But the pond, freshwater pond, if that's where the fishing tackle is, that's not this property in question.
I'm not saying about this property in question. I'm just saying that's in general. The kids doing donuts down there in the sand, fires, things that, I mean, when I see people down there, I'm nice to everybody. Just, if you bring it in, bring it out. Don't leave this junk down here. I got to pick it all up.
It's always bad apples.
I agree. I agree.
We have the ability to make a little waterfront access down there. Yes, you have to have stewards clean it up, police watches, maybe security cameras, whatever it takes in this day and age.
Yep.
I think the more people using it, the better. Then you have more witnesses.
Okay. I don't, but I think the more people down there, the more mess. But
we have very little problems at the landings in town. We clean up the freshet at Pilgrim's Landing. Most of it just floats down the river, but we have very little issues. Never had any damage to the racks or...
Yeah, and I'll work with people. I don't know what the club's going to have to do to protect themselves on. Because if I'm going to go down, anybody in town is going to go with a kayak, I'm going to see that pond and go, oh, baby, that looks like fun. And they're going to be...
on the road, on the easement. Yeah. I mean, there's a beaver pond I don't think anybody wants to go into to the right.
A lot of people swim in that pond right now. So it's not secret. I don't kick people out of there unless they're a problem. Yeah. And it's just going to be a bigger crowd in the freshwater pond there.
Yeah, we're not discussing the freshwater.
I am. I'm,
I think he's trying to say that's what affects me. I respect it.
so somehow, we're gonna, I don't know what the club will do, whether they need a fence, they need more signage, or they need, I don't know what that's gonna create for us, but it'll be something.
No, I mean, it's just taking account what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
I mean, certainly part of our feasibility is understanding the abutter property owners.
Right.
So we appreciate
right.
it.
Yeah.
And that's, I just, yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I just wanted to make a quick comment about the observation that the more people that come into the area, the more likely it's going to be kept clean and free of litter and refuse. I hope that's the case, frankly, but it may not be, and I think Welsh Rock is an example of that. The land trust needed to close that down on the weekend because it was being overrun. In fact, we have the land trusts, the land trusts still has Gallagher here. About the issues the land trust has had on Welsh Rock with the crowd on the weekends.
I can also say that the neater we keep it, we've experienced less problems in the parking lot too, so it works both ways.
But the Watch Rock situation that we have to close it because on the weekends, because we have so many folks from out of town coming down, we tried to stay on top of it, and we had all of our volunteers going there every weekend trying to pick things up. We had a porta potty there, we have 2 garbage cans there, people are taking dirty diapers and leaving them on the ground, there's fishing materials all over the place, and sadly, it is one of the most beautiful pieces of property in Old Lyme. It has tons of water access, not for boats, but you could swim from there if you want. And it is very difficult to maintain to such a degree that we have to close it on the weekends. And then we have people sneaking around, going into those. It is not an easy process, and it's very remote. We can't have a cop drive by and look in because it's a piece of property.
How many properties do you guys have in town?
We have 13.
13, and how many properties?
13 preserved.
13
And
reserved.
actually, I really am not here to present the land trust opinion. We have not met as a board.
No,
I know, and I'm just getting a little uncomfortable, representing a land trust position.
Regardless of that,
I'll be happy to,
how many acres of open space?
We have over 1,100 acres.
And how about the Open Space Commission? How many acres of land you guys control?
Roughly about 1,000.
How many of those properties do you guys have to shut down due to people polluting?
We don't. We haven't shut any down.
Watch Rock is the only place, but it is one of the...
So out of all those collective properties, you have one that you have to close down.
We hope we would never have.
Oh, I know. Pretty good if you have that many.
I would just point out too that we are an all-volunteer organization.
For sure, that we are.
We do not have the support of the town.
Yep.
On our properties either.
No, I was not specifically mentioning the land trust. I was more talking about.
So that's why
I think there's an example, the Route 156 Black Hole River Bridge.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of people who park there, and I've gone down amongst the rocks and toward the old abutment, and you find white socks on the ground. You say, why the hell would people leave their socks behind? And I think they use them to hold eels when they put them on the hooks. So I've not walked around to see whether the marsh has been very degraded as a result of, because they go quite far back toward the cemetery and so forth, and both north and south on the Black Hall River. And I think this is not related to the subject here, but I think the Black Hall Outfitters encourage people to kayak down to the Gristle Point Preserve, where the birds are trying to make merry, and they pretty well terrorize the plovers. They get out of the boats, and I don't think they have a warden now, do they?
Not full time.
Yeah, so it's tough. That's unrelated to here, but I think we can see with the public access, I think our citizens are pretty respectful of our properties. I think when you get people that show up with big buckets and stuff and they're going to camp out for the day, they are less so, although I'm sure some of them are good. So we just have to be careful how, if this were to become public access, it has to be managed. We can't say, okay, well, the town will do it, the town. That means who? What budget, et cetera. And maybe we would be pleasantly surprised if people don't come there very often. But I guess if it gets on somebody's website, because I know at Tanamahaig, they were very upset that it's a website deal. And of course, the more it's discussed publicly and conflict and stuff, the more people say, oh, I want to go look at this. And now it creates more public interest. So we have to be smart and sensible. And I think if we proceed to analyze this more and really get to a common ground, I think we're apart right now. And I think maybe we can do more research that you all are performing, and nobody's going to pull the trigger and have a grand opening in 3 weeks. I think we'll take our time, make sure everybody's heard, and we'll see where we go with this.
Hey, Kim, can I ask the Blackhall gentleman a question? Matt Ward here.
Matt Ward. Yeah, speak up, Matt.
Yes, I was going to ask the Blackhall gentleman, the superintendent there, the right-of-way. So Blackhall owns, and then the town and the property owner there have the right-of-way on that? Is that correct?
Yes. The road goes over Blackhall property until it gets to private property or state or town property. Town property. Right? But in case of Blair, it goes to the end.
Correct.
Yeah. Matt Ward, the selectman here.
Okay.
Greg, did you want to say something?
I want to just make a quick comment. The folks at Harbor Management have talked a great deal about Deep's initial assessment of this project and the application and so forth. Before I retired, I worked for a regulatory agency for the state government, and one of the rules was that you don't really opine upon an application until the process is completed. You've talked to people that have tried to get docks put on rivers or boat launches. It seems to me to be quite the expensive and time-consuming process. We happened to be there when the Deep guy was there, and we talked to him briefly, and he mentioned after the application would probably be a public hearing. Well, if he's opining on what he thinks is going to be approved already prior to the public hearing, that seems a little bit off to me, so I just wanted to make that point.
Okay.
We, as the Harbor Management Commission, deal with every single dock in this town and the applications, and just to let you know that we're pretty well knowledgeable about what gets applied for, and we go over everything. And then DEP, that initial time that he came down was to just really hear what's important, what we should know, what we can do, what we can't do. It was just literally just something that he said, let me go down, let me take a look.
I understand he's giving you his point of view, but his point of view may not be.
Oh, we understand that. But you have to start. But you have to start somewhere.
It's part of the feasibility.
It's part of the feasibility, right? It's part of the feasibility. If he comes down and he says, there's absolutely no way that I would allow that.
I can explain to you that the NEDB, the National Diversity Database, is the one who actually makes a determination on any environmental impact as far as
right, and this area, this property does seem to be within.
Correct. So what's nice about this permit process through DEP is that when we go through the permit process with them, it has to go to the NEDB for a specific site-specific review. Mm-hmm. So regardless of looking on the internet, it might fall in an image on the NEDB database. However, they will look at it under their own scrutiny, under their own terms, and under their own conditions as far as what criteria has to be met in order for that to be considered a sufficient opportunity to be opened up. If NEDB turns it down, then that's it. It's the end of the road. But if NEDB allows it to proceed forward, that means that it met parameters that they set from an environmental standpoint to allow the project to move forward. So it's going to have that NEDB review, who is ultimately the DEP. All the stuff that we're talking about here, falls the line, below the high tide line in that sense. So all of that is within the DEP's jurisdiction, not open space, not the harbor management, not anything. It's specifically tailored to actually the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEP. So both of those regulatory entities will have to do a full environmental review before they even issue a permit.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is
he was saying,
let's see how the review.
Correct. Yeah.
Talk around a little bit.
We're all around the same
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not getting ready to build the dock.
All right. We have a question over here.
Jim, I just want you to know there's 10 minutes.
I know, 10 minutes. We'll
Just to piggyback on that, so do I have it correct, sir, from kind of your point of view, is put in, if all these passes of feasibility studies are supposed to the correct permit processing and that you guys support what we decided to do?
I think if the process goes forward and the proper reviews and research by DEP and the folks at the Natural Diversity Database say there's no problem, I personally think that everybody ought to stay off the salt marsh, but that's my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Chris mentioned that there'd be this walk to get out.
Yeah, no,
well, wait, and but we know that children and other people who are not very sensitive, they'll go down and want to look at the edge to look at the hermit crabs and that sort of stuff. So I don't know if people are not supposed to be on the marsh without a fence or something, but I know with the cemetery fence, they cut the anchor fence and went right through it. So I guess you could see and just have some signage and all that stuff and hope for the best. But I think unsupervised people, you have a risk, and it's worth taking if it's a glorious place, perhaps. And I think the study and the cooperation we hope to have will come up with a common thread here.
We feel the same way. I feel the same way. We all feel the same way as a whole. Tromping around. I mean, I even had probably a conversation that was very sensitive, and I said to Jim, can we make this as a town sticker that only people that are stewards of the town can take care of? He said, that'll get you in a lot of hot water. Mm-hmm. So honestly, we've had a lot of talk about we really don't want it trashed, and that's one that I want to preserve, but having an access, a walkway access, and having signage and really being stewards to every parcel. We're all stewards to each parcel to make sure you take care of it.
I think there's two important things to close on is, first that, I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves about building a dock.
Yeah.
If we get 2 parking spots there and we get 2 extra residents a day to be able to see the scenic vista, that's a win. It doesn't have to be this grandiose park. And I think the second part of that is, if we don't do anything, the state can come in tomorrow and say, you didn't do anything, we're taking this back because you're not giving the residents access. And I don't think any of us want the state to have access to this.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's about 5 minutes of 6, so I think we need to adjourn this. I think it's been productive to hear the discussion. What?
I know 5 and 6.
You got to speak up.
We just had a few pictures we wanted.
Oh, okay.
Would that be all right?
All right. If it gets to be 6, we're going to have to shut it down.
Was there any public comment that anyone wanted to get in here from any of you?
Michael, we're out of time, really. If we're going to look at this, we got to clear out of here in about 4 minutes. Sorry.
I'm sure we'll meet again.
Yes.
These are pictures of the...
You got to really speak up. Pretend you're yelling at your children.
They're grown. They yell at me.
These are pictures of this site that, at lower tide, and you can see on both sides the mud banks. You can see in front of this piece, the solid mud bank, and along here, and here, over here, and then coming down. So their access is...
Where's the property actually?
The property is...
You got right here. Right here. Finger. No.
It's right...
No. Down. Keep going down. It's right here. I'm sorry. It goes down here.
It goes to here. Right, here. And this is solid mud flat. There's mud flats. And yeah, we'll just go forward. You can see if we increase the pictures, you can see how much the river has silted in.
I see it.
But you're only showing a portion of the property, yeah?
No,
We're showing the
Just
access.
the
we're showing, and where that water is only 1 to 2 inches of water.
That's all you need for a kayak.
So I think the key point we want is there are stronger moon tides, spring tides, and things like that.
Could I finish speaking, please? Thank
Absolutely,
you.
you're done.
No, I'm not. This is at low tide, which shows all of the marsh. That little bit of water, if you get a kayak in there, you probably can go 3 feet before you hit the mud.
So again, I think the important thing is the DEP looks for access points no matter what the tide. If you can only use it at high tide, that's the way. And again, even if we can park 2 cars there to have residential access to see it, that's good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves thinking about island structures.
Okay.
We're not even there. This open space or the public house?
All right, I think it's getting very, very close. I think we're going to call the meeting to a motion to adjourn, and then you can have a little chat, but we got to move out for the next people. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.